Hello, welcome. I'm surprisingly upbeat, which is probably unreflective of the sort of situation we're currently living in. If you watched my last live stream, thank you very much. I'm doing another one for you now. This one is a bit different. Rather than me sort of ranting about the politics of the day, I'm also going to do that, but with a sort of call to action now as well. I want to talk to you about rent, basically. Because here in the UK, and I assume it's similar elsewhere, our government has frozen mortgages for landlords. So they don't have to pay their mortgage payments whilst the crisis is going on. Great. Okay, so that's going to save you some money. If you are paying a mortgage, excuse me. However, a lot of people are not paying mortgages, they're paying rent, which is basically the same thing, except you don't get anything at the end of it, and it tends to be cheaper every month. Sorry, more expensive every month. So that's where we are at the moment. In late capitalism, renting is more expensive than buying a house. So what's happened here is there's no rent freeze, basically. So the people that are renting from people that buy to let, which basically means they buy a house with money they don't have. They get a mortgage to buy the house, and then they rent the house. They rent the house out to tenants like you and I, and they use the rent money from the tenants to pay their mortgage, and some of it left on the side becomes their profit, and then it becomes a profit-making business, which is generating money out of nothing, basically. Obviously, you have to keep up with some of the landlord responsibilities of the upkeep of the house, but in general it's money for nothing and your kicks for free. So what I wanted to propose right now is a rent strike. Okay, now bear with me. Now, a rent strike is basically, as it sounds, you go on strike from paying rent. You don't pay your rent. How is that going to benefit us? I'll get evicted, I might get arrested, there might be bailiffs knocking at my door. I hear you asking. Yeah, I just wanted to sort of run through what will happen if you do join a rent strike, both in the positive and in the not really that negative, but potentially negative side effects. But first of all, let's talk about why. So why should you go on rent strike? The fact of the matter is people are already going on rent strike. Okay, the student union, well, that is NUS, National Union of Students, are already supporting a lot of students who are on rent strike, a lot of whom are stranded or isolated in their student housing at university. They can't leave, obviously, because they're in quarantine. But however, they can't work because they're in quarantine, and their student loan doesn't, or their bursary, or whatever it is that they get, doesn't cover them for their time in their accommodation, essentially. So the NUS has approved the backing of a student rent strike. So it's already begun. So that's one thing to take into account. The other one is the fact that people are still being charged rents whilst landlords aren't being charged mortgages. So this doesn't make any sense. And also people aren't working. People have been retained in their jobs and being paid 80% of their normal earnings by the government. A lot of the time, like, those earnings are 50 to 75% going on your rent anyway. So, you know, a lot of people, especially in London where I used to live, you will likely spend more than 50% of your income on your rent because it's that expensive. Again, a lot of this is buy to let, a lot of this is profit making. If they've already owned a house, then it's all profit. You know, they don't live there, they don't really have any association to the property apart from a name on a piece of paper and the occasional bits of repair work. A lot of the time they tend to either ignore, neglect, or offload to external companies to deal with anyway. Obviously they're fitting the bill for that, so that is helpful, but at the same time I think the property's relationship should only really be to the person who lives there or the people that live there. So it's a horrible, disgusting profit-making racket is the property industry in this country. So this is why you should be angry at the fact that you, as a tenant, who's a more vulnerable member of society, are being neglected by government legislation in the crisis. However, the less unstable members of society who own properties, the property owners, they are being rewarded for their Machiavellian acquisition of properties and money for nothing racket, let's call it, because that's essentially what it is. So you should be angry. We should all be angry. And what do we do with that anger? We could talk about it like we are here on social media, on YouTube, or we could do something, and we could do something together. And that thing that we could do together is rent strike. Okay, so that's when we all stop paying our rent. We make sure that our reasons are known. So either we'll write to our landlords, or we'll write to the government, or we'll write to our housing association, or all of the above, and let them know why we're doing what we're doing, and try and publicize it as much as you can. Put it on social media and say, hey, this isn't fair. I have no income, or I have a much reduced income. So I am less able to pay my rent, or in some cases completely unable to pay my rent. Why do the generally wealthy property owners get let off the hook with their landlords, with their mortgages, and I, as a more vulnerable member of society, as a tenant, don't get let off the hook? And why is that? It's my money, and 50% plus of my income, and even more so with my reduced income, going towards someone that now doesn't have any overheads for the service that I'm using. And I say service lightly, because a home is a home. It's where you live, it's where you love, it's where you entertain, it's where you have your dreams and your life and you relax or whatever. Anyway, home is not just a service. It's not like going to the gym or whatever. So my proposal, rent strike. That's why. I can see the immediate concerns with this would be, what if you get evicted? What if you end up with bailiffs at your door? What's the implication of this? I mean, what I know off the bat from my own experience with rent strikes, with renting, is, for a start off, when you don't pay your rent, it is not a criminal matter. Okay, the police will not get involved. It is a civil matter. It's a civil dispute. If whatever fallout you have with a landlord and a tenant situation, that's a civil dispute, and that's handled not by the criminal justice team. That's handled as a civil matter, as opposed to a criminal one. So there are implications, of course, to not paying the rent, but it's very slow burning. So a landlord can send you a letter evicting you, or advising you of a court date. Again, it's up to you whether you do that or not. And also you can appeal, and you can have a lot of leeway with regards to how long you deal with it, based on your own personal circumstances, and whatever advice you'll be getting at the time for your specific situation, which you'll be getting from either a trade union that you're a part of, or the Citizens Advice Bureau, and also the charity Shelter. In Swindon, we've also got a housing charity called Threshold as well. I'm sure you have a local one as well. So there's lots of support you can get completely free of charge, with regards to advice and legal definitions, etc. So that's one thing you'd have to initially not worry about. The other thing is, if everybody does it, and if enough people do it, and especially if a lot of people do it that are part of a portfolio. I mean, you might not necessarily be able to match up directly, but if enough people do it, you will have property owners who have a portfolio, which means they own a couple of property that they rent out. And if all of their tenants turn around and contact them and say, we're going on rent strike because we don't think it's fair, because you don't have any overheads from the mortgage, why should our overhead of rent still exist in this crisis time? The fact of the matter is, it shouldn't. And these people aren't going to be any worse or better off if they've got a job of their own. Then they'll obviously be receiving 80% of their normal income. And if this is their only source of income, then I have very little sympathy for you if you own more than one house and don't live in and don't have any other source of income and use the other house as your source of income, I don't think it's a very good way to go about your business, and I'm sure you would have been advised by many people not to do that. But yeah, again, little sympathy. However, you can also contact a Citizens Advice Bureau. I'm sure you've got a lawyer, a property lawyer that's helped you with all of that, or a housing agency or something. Basically, those people will probably be fine. So do not worry about your landlord. Like, they are not going to be in any dire straits compared to you as a renter. You are getting the rough end of this deal, so that's why you need to take a stand. And also, you're getting the least support from the government as far as policy goes during the crisis. So, you know, once again, all of the help is being towards landlords and not to tenants. So as a tenant, you have every single right to withdraw your rent, okay? And you will not be approached by the police because it's not a criminal matter, it is a civil matter. You may be evicted, you may be approached, you know, via email, by your landlord. They may threaten you in different ways or whatever, but the fact of the matter is, you know, you do have a lot of time, and you do have a lot of, you know, 10 days correspondence either side between each email, etc. And you do have a lot of support available to you. But if enough people do it, then this is how we change laws, okay? And this is how we challenge the government, because if enough landlords are getting hassle from their tenants saying they're not paying their rent because of the reasons we've just discussed, then they will then probably write to their MP and their government and say, hey, you need to do something about this, which then it gets up to the higher levels of debate, of which case, in order to deal with the matter, it is going to either have to go the landlord's way and harsher, you know, consequences need to be applied if you don't pay the rent, or most likely it will go to the case of, hang on a second, if everybody's doing it, we can't stop everybody from doing it. So we're going to need, you know, a rent threshold and ultimately a rent halt, really, because, you know, it wouldn't make any sense, especially in the eyes of the public, for the government to be punishing tenants and not be punishing landlords. So that's my proposal. As I said, people are still doing it. People are proposing it. The London Renters Union have written to the government many times asking for a halt on rent. There hasn't been any response. The government has said that they will halt evictions that had begun before the crisis, so that people aren't evicted during the crisis, but haven't said anything about people being evicted after the crisis, because obviously a lot of people will not be able to pay their rent anyway, whether they're rent striking or not, because of their stopped income. The government has not, to this day, said any confirmation that they'll put any blocking from tenants pursuing eviction processes after the crisis is over. So this is why it's really, really important to get one up on landlords at the moment, and to really, you know, show that we mean business collectively as working class, as renters. So that's my proposal. If you've got any thoughts, any questions, anything to add to it, chuck it to the comments down below. I'm going to be trying doing a few more of these sort of live streams whilst we're in isolation at the moment. As far as long videos go, I haven't got any subjects I'm looking at the moment, but I just want to keep this sort of regular for you guys, keep the discussion going. Things that you can look up, and I'll try and put some links down there for you if I get around to it, is the London Renters Union. If you're in London, absolutely join. It's free to join. Lots of information. And as I said, I used to live in London. I used to rent in London. One of them, I'm still on the database. One of their members rang me up just to check how I was doing under the crisis the other day. That's how, you know, on it and efficient and, you know, in touch they are, really. So if you're in London, join the London Renters Union. If you're in another city, you might have a similar renters union, so look it up, try and find it. If you're not, then look to set one up and look at London Renters Union and how they are running themselves, and maybe model something on that for other towns, cities and areas of the country. The other one is Acorn, which is a community union, so you should definitely check those guys out. I know there's a branch that's being started here in Swindon. And I think that's it, really. There's some articles to look at. So 100 to sign up to Rent Strike. There's a Guardian article. So just look up Rent Strike on Google, and you'll see lots of information about what's going on at the moment. And you should 100% get involved. This is how the working class flex our power. This is how we get laws changed. And this has always been the way that we've got laws changed, is by community action, is by acting collectively, and is by withdrawing the only things that we have to withdraw, which in this case is rent, in other cases, you know, is labour in sort of normal working unions. Whatever power we've got, we need to flex it collectively, and we do need to protect each other and fight for something better for everyone. I'm going to leave you all now. It's just a quick one compared to last time, but I will chat to you guys soon. All right, thanks for watching. Cheers.